you make those points, and I don't really want to go there because I don't either want to equalize it and say it's 6 of one and half dozen of the other. I'm not saying that either. It's not for us to say that. Lots of people will say that, but it won't alter anything.
Right.
What we have, as you rightly say, is another completely different solution, which is above politics, it's above religious dogma, and it's the only lasting solution. As I mentioned earlier, some of the other things can work for a while and appear to get great results, and in some ways they could get great results, but they won't solve it permanently.
Yeah.
No, we had the war to end all wars, and then we had another one.
Yeah.
We had the Second World War. That should have sorted it out. That, in theory, should have dealt with, gross anti-Semitism, etc., etc., etc. And here we are now. And it's because we haven't tried what you've called the third way. The other option, I would call it the real way.
Yeah.
It's God's way, it's Brahma's way, it's Allah's way, if you like. It's above words. But it will bring a lasting solution.
The Spiritual Freedom Show with Richard Lawrence, where politics is not the answer, materialism counts for nothing, and spirituality will set you free.
Richard.
Darren.
So let's get down to it, I think, and let's just tackle the biggest story in the news this week, which is the Israel-Hamas war. And, this is a conflict, of course, probably more than 100 years in the making, which is kind of exploded into a new level of violence, at least in recent times. And I wanted to explore with you today, I think, where we sort of stand on this issue and, what can be done about it as well.
I'd say thousands of years old, the conflict in that region.
Yeah. It's certainly been like this boiling pot, this melting pot of conflict and violence for a long, long time, as you say. So it's nothing new in that region, although it's disturbing, I think, the level now, especially living in such a globalized society, what the ramifications are worldwide.
They are.
Especially for international military powers.
We're in a very, very dangerous situation. People don't need me to tell them that in our world. We have a war in the Middle East with various factions involved directly or indirectly.
Yeah.
We have a war in Europe with worldwide factions involved directly and indirectly.
Yeah.
We have other crises in the world, and all this goes to prove that violence doesn't work. There's a sword of Damocles hanging over us, you could say, and our job is to transmute the sword of Damocles into the sword of truth.
I like that, yeah.
And I prepared that one. But I would like to, if I may, to read this, because I don't think people should underestimate the power of truth. That's not going to be the thing we're really going to focus on. We're going to focus on sending energy. But truth has a tremendous power, providing it's a great truth. And I think it's very apposite, by the way, talking of truth, just before I read this, to say that truth is a higher thing than facts. Wherever possible, one should be absolutely truthful about all facts, all situations, but there are moments when there's a higher truth. They're very rare. They may never happen to some people. Let me give an example. If we'd lived in the Second World War, if we were in Germany in that time, if we had Jewish people in our home, and we were protecting them, and a Nazi officer, an SS officer came around and said, "Do you have Jewish people in your home?" You would say no to protect them. It's not factually true, but there's a higher truth.
Yeah, I get it.
And that Nazi officer at that moment, because of their motive, doesn't deserve the full truth. But there is a higher truth, and this leads me to what I want to read, which I think we've mentioned before on this show, but it bears re-mentioning again. It's from You Are Responsible. It's the Master Aetherius. It's from the book You Are Responsible. We are on the verge of a new terrestrial age during which the ancient teachings will be presented in a more modern way. Your theatres and your broadcasting system will be used by those few who have the light within them. See how powerful they can be. See what strength they wield throughout the cosmic system. Never before in the history of this planet were people called upon as they are being called upon today. Every initiate is being called upon to do his best. Every disciple, every follower is being called upon to do his part too. So do it and know that you cannot fail. If you fail, then God would fail. That's a truth. That's a sword of truth that can transmute the sword of Damocles that's hanging over us now. Because there is something we can do. And in your introduction, I think it was clear. Surely we have learned by now that violence does not work.
Yeah.
It may appear to work. It may even work to some degree. You could look at the Second World War and you could say that, yes, it solved certain problems which had to be solved, and certain people were saved, especially Jewish people and others, by that action. But the violence itself must have planted other seeds.
Yeah.
And so you had, not very long after that, of course, this could be said to be unrelated, but Stalin was certainly bolstered tremendously by that situation. His power was bolstered, and it's said that he killed 30 million of his own people. And that's one thing that evil dictators, and we can see it happening right now, have in common, and terrorists and people who have evil in their hearts, they don't care about their followers. They despise their followers. They don't mind if they die at all, as long as they achieve their aims. And the only answer is, as I mentioned, the sword of truth and direct spiritual action. When we act, we have an impact on our world. When we act to help our brothers and our sisters around the world, children, old people, and we're going to talk about how we can do that. And this is the good news that we're bringing you on the Spiritual Freedom Show. Yes, we can do something about this. That terrible feeling of helplessness can be transmuted into action. There's things we can do. But when we do that, we have an impact. Here's another little thing I'd like to read, please. When you use this power, and that's a reference to the power from satellite number 3, but it applies to using love energy, second freedom, and sending it to others. When you use this power on behalf of your more ignorant brother, you help yourself, you help him, you help the planet upon which you live, and indeed the whole solar system. A small degree maybe, but in a degree most definitely. And you also help the whole galactic system in a smaller degree, but in a degree. So this is action, this is cosmic action. Even if and even when, as I hope we will, we direct energy to the people in Israel, the people in Gaza, the people in the Middle East. When we do that, we're having an impact at a galactic level. And there isn't, I've said before, I think on this show, there isn't a higher motive I can think of than having an effect on a galactic level. Because the galaxy, there's only one sin in the whole cosmic system, and that's ignorance. Master Aetherius has made that very clear. And it's a brilliant pronouncement. And it changes history in terms of dogmas and orthodoxies, which we may talk about on another occasion.
Yeah.
But
we will.
When we impact on the whole galaxy, we are affecting, even to a tiny degree, as the Master Aetherius said in that extract, the galaxy itself. So this action of service, as we should do, to help to bring balance in this very dangerous time, wielding the sword of truth and compassion, this will also impact at a cosmic level.
Yeah, I think it's sobering to think that, of course, that everything that we think and do does have an impact on a much, much, much larger scale than we imagine. And I think if, the sobering reality of beginning to realize our interconnectedness with all things would definitely cause us to rethink the way that we think and act in the world today. And certainly that has a huge bearing on the way that everyone is behaving in this situation right now that we're talking about. I saw a kind of disturbingly true satire by a comedian on YouTube who was sort of dramatizing the agony of going through the process of doing his Israel-Hamas post on X/Twitter. And the sort of difficulty of choosing a side, so to speak, and standing out there. And I thought, the whole thing was basically, what I took away from that is like, there is no side to choose here. I mean, what happened over the weekend was wrong. Israel's response in this extremely violent way is wrong. I mean, that's ultimately what we're saying, I think. And what's happening, what happened in Israel is awful. What happening in Gaza is awful. And as I say, violence has not sorted this to date. Politics has not been the answer. But there is a third way, which is not about choosing sides between either of these things, but about choosing what we're talking about here, which is the direct spiritual action for the greatest good of all, recognizing the interconnectedness of all life, not just on Earth, but throughout the universe.
You make those points, and I don't really want to go there because I don't either want to equalize it and say it's 6 of one and half dozen of the other. I'm not saying that either. It's not for us to say that. Lots of people will say that, but it won't alter anything.
Right.
What we have, as you rightly say, is another completely different solution, which is above politics. It's above religious dogma. It's pure love energy.
Right.
And it really works. And it's the only lasting solution. As I mentioned earlier, some of the other things can work for a while and appear to get great results. And in some ways, they could get great results, but they won't solve it permanently.
Yeah.
No, we had the war to end all wars, and then we had another one.
Yeah.
We had the Second World War. That should have sorted it out. That, in theory, should have dealt with, gross anti-Semitism, etc., etc., etc. And here we are now. And it's because we haven't tried what you've called the third way, the other option, I would call it the real way.
Yeah.
It's God's way, it's Brahma's way, it's Allah's way, if you like. It's above words. But it will bring a lasting solution.
And just before we talk about in more detail what we mean by that, which I think you want to get into, it's I think another thing which I think we've talked about in a previous show, but it bears repeating again, especially in this context, is that we're not necessarily advocating just for pacifism either, are we? Because just a pacifistic approach in the way that people traditionally understand it, that is not enough.
It's not enough. I think that's a good way of putting it. It's got its merits providing you take action. I think Mars Sector 6, the giver of the 9 freedoms, very early on, I think in 1956, gave a transmission about non-violence. And he talked about non-violent action, not just non-violence, non-violent action. What some people do is protest. They say words. You could say that we're saying words now. They have a certain power if they are true words, in the highest sense of true, but in the end, it's action. It's even beyond that, and that's what we're calling for on the Spiritual Freedom Show today, spiritual action. And it's amazing, actually, that there are people willing to do it, but not the numbers you'd expect. And part of the reason for that, I think, is programming and it's ignorance, which, as I mentioned earlier, is the only sin in the whole cosmic system, as stated by the master atheist. But that doesn't mean it's excusable, because people have a way of finding out. And disbelief isn't an excuse. It's a choice.
Yes, yeah.
Actually, especially if you haven't tested your disbelief. You've just chosen not to believe in something and not even look into it. That's a choice. There is one way to overcome that sin, and that's to enlighten yourself. And, of course, the best way to enlighten yourself is to serve others. I mean, there's only 2 things, really, that we should be focused on. One is evolving ourselves. That's why we're here, spiritually evolving ourselves. And the other thing, which is even greater, is helping others to evolve.
Yes.
And those are the only 2 things that we should matter, that really matter. Anything which is contrary to either of those 2 things is not, you could call it a sin, is a bad thing, is an ignorant thing.
Totally.
And somebody saying, well, I don't think I can do anything. Unfortunately, I don't believe in prayer. I don't believe in whatever. That doesn't make any difference. It is a fact. It does work. It is a transmuting energy that you can test, you can feel. We had a workshop actually here last week where people were coming along. We had people who came along who didn't believe, some of them, in psychic powers at all. But by the end of the workshop, they did, because they knew it. Every single person there experienced it. And one of the things they experienced was healing energy, not just sending it, but receiving it. Over a distance, we had person after person who tangibly felt that energy. But those people, every one of those people had bothered to make the effort to find out. There were people at the beginning, and you'll remember, of the workshop who put their hands up and said, I basically don't know that this is true. I don't know that I can do this. That's why I'm here, to find out. And they found out. So they enlightened themselves sufficiently to get rid of that ignorance.
Yeah.
So people can do this. It's a choice. It's a choice I believe everybody should be making, because it is available to us all. And you can still have your political beliefs. You could be a person who is on one side or the other, but you could put that aside while you do this.
Exactly.
And just send out love energy for the betterment of all.
Because, as you say, that is what matters in the end. That's all that we should really be concerned about. That's the lens that we can view this whole situation through, actually. I think it's really helpful.
It is.
Yeah, so... and by the way, I just want to say that I definitely, I was there at that workshop. I saw people react in that way, and the sort of like almost shock in some cases.
It's a wonderful thing to see.
Yeah,
it's a wonderful thing to see.
Because you just see like this sort of barrier fall down and think, wow, this is actually real. I'm experiencing this flow of spiritual energy.
Yeah.
And
that and other experiences they had and picked up, telepathy and so on. But certainly perhaps the most beneficial of all the things that we did in the workshop, and all the things you can actually do from a psychic point of view, and this is clearly stated in the fourth freedom, is the dispensation of spiritual energies.
Yeah.
That's what we really want to, that's what the world needs now.
Yeah.
I think, though, we should be responsible, and I think you'd have to be pretty blind disbeliever not to see that we have some gross dark force interference in this situation, not just in this one, but in this current one. And so therefore, when you go about sending spiritual energy to this situation, I would also advocate protection. And we will tell you also how you can do that.
Okay, great. Yeah, so we've got those two things there.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about this, direct spiritual action. What do we mean? What is it about?
Well, spiritual action is incredibly simple. It is radiating energy to others. Now, you can use, as we do, the 12 blessings, and we have 12 blessings online, which people can go to 12blessings.org, can't they?
Yep.
And they can tune in with regular online services that are running right now for the world situation, which will definitely include this, of course. But you don't have to even believe in that at this stage. I mean, if you do, that's all the better, but you don't have to. You don't have to believe in the Aetherius Society. You don't have to believe in the 9 freedoms. I would say it's a choice you're making there. I repeat that because you don't know. So it's a choice you've made without knowing. But that's a different issue to do this. You could be of any religion. You could be of no religion.
Absolutely.
You could not believe in God at all in any form and still believe in positive energy. Actually, the Aetherius Society used to have a group in a certain part of China, actually Shanghai, years ago, when they weren't allowed to perform any religious practice.
Wow.
And they called it energy transmission.
Okay.
And they did that. And it was a wonderful group. We had it for a while.
Wow.
And Dr. King loved that group there doing this at a very dangerous time for them, and so it was a non-religious thing. But you could just, of choice, you just don't believe in any of those things, but you can believe in the positive power of mind energy imbued with love. Let's say that. Love energy, and it's so brilliantly described in the second freedom, which is above thought even at its height. It's pure transmission of energy with compassion in your heart. That's the only thing you will need. I will say that. You must have some compassion for all life. Right. And I think most people do.
So do I.
And that's why they feel so frustrated and helpless. Well, good news. You don't need to have, it's the most, I was told, I used to have a column at the Observer, and I did a lot of research into stress, and I was told the most stressful experience in life that you can have is a feeling of helplessness.
Oh, really?
And we've talked before on this show about soul repression. That's the greatest frustration you can have. Your soul is crying out for you to take spiritual action.
Yeah.
And you can.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful thing. It's a great release. It will help you.
Yeah.
It will develop you. It will evolve you. But most importantly, it will help and evolve others.
No, that's beautifully put. And I think, it's like people do feel this great sense of helplessness, but then they also sort of repress it because it's such an overwhelming feeling, and they don't really have an outlet for transmuting it in the way that you've described, which is ultimately direct spiritual action in this way.
Yeah.
So so we're radiating spiritual energy.
Yeah, so let's break it down.
Yeah.
First of all, I'd suggest you remove rings and watches, and that's something Dr. King used to teach. It's a very simple thing. I mean, again, you don't have to. It'll still work. But this is just to make the flow all the better, so that metals and jewels and bracelets, anything like that, they tend to attract energy. That's just a little thing you can do, which will help. But even if you don't do that, it's still fine. Still do it. It's very simple. You can sit or you can stand, but here we are sitting.
Yeah.
You simply raise the hands like this.
Yeah.
Now, I mentioned protection, so I'm going to suggest that you start actually not raising the hands, but placing the hands on the knees. You don't need to adopt a yoga asana. If you do, if you practice yoga, hatha yoga, and you want to use a yoga asana, such as Padma or the lotus or something, great. Be my guest. That's wonderful. That's a great thing to do. But you can do it purely like we're doing it now. You want to try and not have tension, because that's another thing that can obstruct the flow of this energy. The energy is a universal supply. There's no limit to it. We limit how much we use it. The source in this solar system is the sun. And those people who worship the sun and were regarded as pagan for doing so were way ahead of the people who dismiss them as pagans, because this is a very wise thing to do. It's a great source of all life in this solar system. So we start, though, with a protective practice, I would suggest, because there's clearly gross dark force interference. And Dr. King himself spoke about this, and if we have time, we can go into it in a situation in Los Angeles, actually. But so start by tuning into the Mother Earth. Now, in this wonderful intelligence, the Mother Earth, which is a living being, that's what a lot of ecologists miss. In doing so, they miss the very heart of what they're doing.
Yeah.
But it's a wonderful living intelligence, and she will share with us her violet flame. And this is a very, very protective force. So start with the eyes closed, visualizing the violet flame coming up through the feet, through the legs, through the trunk, up through the head, and around the body, through the aura, which is all around the body, cleansing that too. Again, if you don't believe that, then it'll happen anyway, it's fine. And the violet flame will go up above your head. You have to visualize that. There will come a time when you will actually be able to see it. So it comes up through and above the head, 30, 40 feet. So that's a protective, warm, caressing practice. Now, the next thing I would suggest you do is to feel at peace. Now, a lot of people don't realize that peace is an energy, or it flows as an energy through us. It actually comes through us as, you might call it, some would call it, I would certainly call it the light of God. But it's you might want to just call it a gentle, caressing energy. And they don't think they can be at peace unless it just sort of haphazardly comes to them one day. But we can start to cultivate peace, inner peace, and it will flow if you allow it to. And first cometh the angel peace to make way for the goddess love. That's a line from the 12 blessings, which means, of course, if we are at peace ourselves, then when we radiate the energy outwards, we'll be radiating peace to others. So it's a great thing to have as a bedrock. So we have the violet flame, and then we just for a few moments breathe deeply and evenly and feel at peace. I'm now going to open the eyes just to explain what we're doing. And then you raise the hands. Now you can actually see us do this. the hands are raised, and this is when you start to channel the energy, the white light. So you bring down white light in your powers of visualization. White contains all the colors of the spectrum. The sun, the solar lords, which is the ninth freedom, solar existence, are not limited to any particular color, but white will contain whatever color is required because it contains all colors. So bring down this white light down through the head, the neck, the shoulders, down the arms, out through the palms. You might start to be feeling this right now. It's a tangible force. It's a real force. Now you can also visualize it going out through the heart chakra. And that's for those who accept such things as the psychic centers. I know they exist. I've experienced them, and I'm sure Darren has too. They are real. This isn't a faith matter. It's a fact matter. So you start to radiate the energy down through the palms and out through the heart center. You've got this flow now of energy going out through you and out to the world. And then you, as it were, condition it with your love for the people in the Middle East, and particularly in the Israel-Gaza region, free of political thought, free of religious dogma, just pure love energy, and allow it to flow out there. And when you do, visualize the area being at peace. Visualize the people there being healed. Visualize them filled with white light. Visualize harmony between the peoples in that region. Sanity in that region. Cooperation. Visualize all these things in your own way so you are not seeing the images that we all see on the television screens. You're seeing light. You're seeing peace. You're seeing harmony. And you're allowing all the while the white light to flow out from above the head, coming down. And it will come down if you allow it to. No force required. It will come down. You might be feeling now, by the way, a tingling or a heat in the palms of your hands. You might be feeling a cold shaft of energy coming down the spine. There are various things you can feel. Note them, but return to your focus. Love, peace, harmony in Israel, in Gaza, in the Middle East. Allow the energy to flow. Now, I personally would add to that a prayer. And I invite anybody who wishes to join in with this to do so. If you don't wish to accept this prayer as part of your exercise, just continue to send energy in your own way. But I'm giving an example now of the type of prayer you can, if you wish, use. O divine Spirit of all creation, O that which is behind all things throughout the cosmos. O we request that your mighty power of love may flow in an unrestricted stream of light to the Israel-Gaza region to bring peace, to bring healing, to bring harmony to all the peoples there, of whatever nation, of whatever religion, of whatever belief. May they be filled now with this healing light. May they be protected. May they be inspired by that which can be done for the good of all. And may your power now flow in abundance to this region. And then I would allow that power to flow, and probably you can feel it now. We certainly can here in the studio, flowing out to this region. And then I would, as a balancing energy, I would always give thanks. Having made a request and definitely having experienced that it's answered, I would do a prayer something like this. O Divine Spirit, we give thanks for using us as channels for your mighty power this day. May peace prevail. May truth live. May love triumph. It is done. And you can continue for longer than this, but if you were concluding, then I would pass one hand across the other and perform what Dr. King called the sealing mudra, which brings the practice to an end. And then I would detach and let it go. The energy's gone out. And later in the day, I would return and do that again. I'd just like to say one other thing about that, Darren, if I may, which is, yes, energy's been sent out. Yes, something has been done. And actually it'll make you, the person doing it, feel better, because at least you've done something about it until you do it again. But also, what you've done there is to manipulate karma. Manipulate karma. And most people, they see karma, we've talked about this before, as a kind of bad thing, an avenging thing, a punishment. Right. But actually it's a wonderful thing. It's a good thing. It's a great thing. In fact, cooperating with the great lords of karma by controlling our thought and action is the greatest prayer we can even do. It's a wonderful thing to do. And what happens then is, one individual who might not feel I can do anything, I might be all on my own in some part of the world, what difference do I make? This is one of the most debilitating feelings. I'm useless, I can't make a difference. Where if we can just do one thing on the Spiritual Freedom Show and get people to realize they can make a difference, they can help to manipulate karma, they can be one of the cells in the body of the whole which changes the karma of the world, which it must do to some degree, and of course changes the karma of the cosmos to some degree, even the galaxy I should say, to some degree. That's a momentous thing that you have done today.
Hey everybody, it's Darren here. Thanks for tuning into the show. Now, if you enjoyed that episode, don't forget to subscribe for more wisdom from the 9 Freedoms. If you'd like to find out more about the 9 Freedoms, about Mars Sector 6 by Dr. George King, go to our website, that's aetherius.org. Richard and I love hearing from you, receiving your comments, your questions on your spiritual experiences, and talking about them on the show. So do write to us, share them with us at spiritualfreedom@richardlawrence.co.uk. Always remember that service is the jewel in the rock of attainment. See you next time.